Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're doing an OTA today. How you doing? Hello everybody. And obviously we don't have the intro. We did it for the sponsorship. Really like what I did with the intro. I've been using it ever since. What do you guys think? Let me know. I haven't asked for feedback on it. I do get a lot of comments saying like, yeah, I like the intro, but do you like it like moving forward? I've been editing it a little bit for some of them, but just let me know your thoughts. We do have an OTA today, 5 changes for August 31st. So we can get right started into it. And I do have a big overview of all the changes in one slide. I thought that would be pretty useful for people. So that is something we will talk about first. But yeah, big rocks. Really happy to see Dr. Doom getting a reversion, but here we do have the changes here. You can see all the changes in a glance. Let me know if this type of thing is helpful. Don't really see this too often. But yeah, so Dr. Doom's getting a buff, and Lady Deathstrike is also getting a buff. And then Marvel, Legion, and then Rock Slider getting nerfs. So you can kind of see the changes here at a glance. I thought this would be really helpful. I'll probably have this on Twitter. I'm not calling it X, things like that. So should be helpful for people. But let's dive into each of the changes one by one and some of their thoughts on why they did it and what went right, what went wrong, that kind of thing. So first off, we do have, now I can get my camera back. We do have Dr. Doom. So I'm really happy about this change in particular because I remember when Dr. Doom got nerfed, I was just like, no, I remember that was my title. No, Doctor Doom. Because I just didn't think it was necessary. Like, obviously, Doctor Doom's a good card, but I kind of saw it as like the benchmark of a really good 6-drop comparative to like an oppressive card. It's more if you're struggling with 6-drops, you need to buff the 6-drops. And honestly, I could definitely see a world where you're buffing 6-drops because there aren't that many 6-drops that frequently get used, right? A lot of times turn 6 is playing lots of cards. Not because, oh, that's the best way to do it. It's just because the 6-drops aren't as powerful, as memorable, right? That's your one play. You played one location a lot of times, right? It's not as crazy as like playing 4, 5, 3 cards in 3 different locations and really contesting all of them. So Doctor Doom lets you do that. Very reliable, has good synergies, and was just a powerful benchmark. I thought it was a good 6-drop. Definitely got nerfed and really sucked to see. So I'm happy they see the data now, right? This is something I don't love too much, where all their changes have to be seen by data, and then after the data, then they have to find fixes, right? So things change slowly in terms of like, if you notice something is oppressive day one, you're gonna have to wait maybe 2 weeks more or longer before they have the data to start working on the changes. So it makes sense to me because you really didn't see Doctor Doom anymore. Even popular decks with like Iron Lad, aren't running Doctor Doom, and Iron Lad's one of the best hits. Like, Doctor Doom's one of the best hits for Iron Lad, so not even running that. Even that Patriot that Forge, Absorbing Man, Brood, Patriot decks, not running Doctor Doom, but has tons of synergies for that card. Like, people are running Silver Surfer instead, which is a good card, but is it better? I don't necessarily know. So hopefully this can bring Doctor Doom back. I do think this helps a lot because things like Doctor Doom into Odin was losing 4 power, which is massive across the board with that play. So this does help a lot. So I think this will bring Doctor Doom back in the meta, and you can finally see some more flexibility, finally see some more people playing this. Let's talk about what they were saying in particular. So they were saying, in hindsight, the timing for this nerf wasn't ideal. While he was strong, we had Spider-Ham coming in. Spider-Ham did get nerfed though, so I wouldn't say Spider-Ham is as necessarily oppressive as it is now. So I don't think that's too relevant. It is somewhat relevant, but not like crazy. You're not seeing Spider-Ham in all the decks. And move decks are also on the rise. Move decks are pretty good into Doctor Doom since you can kind of manipulate all your your areas, and Doctor Doom wants to contest everywhere, and move decks can say no, we're not going to contest this lane. We're going to put our power to a different lane. So move decks are pretty good into Doctor Doom. In the weeks, the metagame shift further with Professor X becoming a lockdown favored once again. Yeah, I mean Professor X is always in the meta. Like it has an effect that's just very unique and shuts down a lot of things. And Captain Marvel challenging locations left and right. That's true. Captain Marvel does affect this a lot, where you want to contest everything, but Marvel just annoys you. So there are some good additions to the meta that make this feel worse. Or Compliment Doom deserves at least a return to for glory in order to complete. I think I agree with their assessment here. They maybe nerfed it too soon. I wouldn't have nerfed it at all, but I do think it's good that they're learning and they're willing to say, oh, we made a mistake here. So that's always good on companies, game designers to be able to do that, because sometimes that's hard to kind of step away from pride and all that stuff. Next up, we have Captain Marvel. So I think this surprises no one. This card is so annoying. Yeah, so it's moving from a 4/5 to a 4/4 at the end of the game. This wins you the game if possible. So yeah, just an oppressive card at 4/5. Like, people just play it and they don't have to worry too much about where their positioning is. I will say you do have to leave room open, and that has been sometimes a struggle, where if you want to really invest into a lane, you have to consider, oh, maybe I need the Marvel. But a lot of times if your deck is built with Captain Marvel, you're running like lots of 4s, so it's not like you're flooding the board too much. So this is generally fine. I think this is a okay change, probably necessary. It being a 4/5 was super strong. 4/4 will definitely see less play, so, I think. So hopefully this balances it out a little bit, because I do think it was a little bit too powerful, too annoying as a 4/5. Moving Carol from 5/6 to 4/5 shook some things up, and this change wound up coming in a little harder than we hoped for. I mean, how could you not see it, right? Anything to 4 is Zabu territory, right? So you had to assume it was like a 3/5 you were making it. Captain Marvel has been one of the best performing cards in our 2 best performing decks: traditional Darkhawk, Zabu, and the new Angela Craven based move deck. I mean, it's a Silk move deck. Craven is there, but not super. I mean, I guess it's probably the best performing the way they worded that deck, right? Because the way you have to look at what they're saying here, right? Like Zabu Hawk makes sense, and then Angela Craven based, right? So probably in their stats, Craven is one of their best performing cards in that deck. So maybe Silk isn't as important as the Craven, but you need Silk to really proc the Craven, so the Silk is super important as well. Anyways, it's just something I'm looking at the wording here. While we know there's movement in the metagame and a few new decks surging to combat these two, which is the Brood Absorbing Man decks, they don't have enough data, so we didn't see any changes for that, right? That was something I guess I'm not surprised about, but something to be expected, where new decks won't get nerfed quickly, just because there's not enough data to really let them know that it's worth nerfing. So we're going to have to deal with the Absorbing Man deck for a while. And all the other decks are getting nerfed, right? Because, hey, these are too strong, let's nerf them, but then the new deck isn't getting touched because there's no data. They didn't need this to shine. Yeah. We're going to cool Kara off for a minute to let the metagame breed before evaluating where her happiest home will be if it's not 4/4. Fair enough. I think it's fine to nerf her for sure, and then we'll see and adjust, because she was definitely too effective. And then Legion, I think this surprises no one. This card is crazy good, honestly. Now that we've gotten to play it, and even making it a 5/7, I think will be fine. Obviously, I think the 8 health matters a lot, so that's the one caveat. I do think this 8 power was really meaningful in how it contests. Like, you could really just play this for tempo, not using it for its ability at all, and it still felt pretty good. But now as a 5/8, I mean a 5/7, you're gonna have to be careful, and you're not going to be able to just win automatically sometimes by just dropping this, even if it has no effect. You might have to think about locations for sure more. So I think this is reasonable. The card was super good. I think it's the best Series 4 card in the game right now, so it's not surprising that it's getting touched up a little bit. Speaking of coming in hot, we were worried players might underestimate Legion, so we gave him a late internal buffs. Yeah, that's true. I did remember reading it. Didn't like it as a 5/7. Thought it was okay as a 5/8. Turned out to be really, really good. So kind of seems silly now. I agree. Legions consistently appear in a variety of strong decks, been one of our top performing cards for a few weeks. I do think one of the reasons cards like Legion ends up shining is because it doesn't need anything else to win the game, right? Like, it's a card that wins the game single-handedly. You don't need other synergies, right? Even some of the other strong cards like Zabu, you need the 4-drops. Kitty, right? Sometimes you need the Angela, you need the Bishop, you need maybe sometimes Hitmonkey before, right? Legion just works, just wins. Same thing with Shang-Chi, right? You don't need other cards to win the game if you have a Shang-Chi in the right circumstances. Those cards just win the games by itself. Where a lot of other cards that do well combo with different cards to really shine, and because they need combo pieces, it means they're less consistent because you're not always going to have those combo pieces. So when there are cards that just work by themselves, we should definitely value them highly or higher than normal, because you don't have to deal with the randomness of drawing extra cards that rely the synergy to be activated. So that's just something I'm thinking about moving forward in how I'm evaluating cards. I'm always trying to learn from where I went wrong in other card evaluations, things like that. And that's something I wanted to share. Anyways, that's been fun. He's been a fresh dynamic to existing matchups that were truly unique. However, he also disrupts some of the diversity. That's true. Like, locations suck. Some locations suck because Legion shuts it down completely. Like, you ever see a bar with no name, right? Sometimes I see that location and I'm thinking to myself, do I play anything? Do I play anything at all? You know, and that's like just such a weird mentality to have. With normally that location, you're like, okay, I will either find a way to manipulate it or I'll just ignore that location completely. But with Legion, I'm just like, do I even play cards in this game? Like, does it make sense? So it's definitely a weird card in how it affects some locations. But I do think it's a cool card, and cards that are cool feel better when they're like, the game feels better if cards that are cool are strong, right? And this is a cool card. I don't fully mind it being strong, but I do think it's nearing oppressive, put it in every deck Shang-Chi levels of like playability. So maybe that needs to be toned down a little bit. So I'm fine with them moving up power and seeing if that bounces out a little bit. And then the last one I believe we have is, honestly, to me, the weirdest change here, where they're moving Rockslide from a 4/5 to a 3/3. Right? Same ability and everything. It's now a 3/3 though. So you're losing 2 power, right? The I guess the upside, I guess, is that you don't need to have Zabu on 3 to play Rockslide on 3 now, right? So you're not beholden to Zabu to do all of your combo. You can just play Rockslide on 3 and it still can work. And a lot of times if you're playing Darkhawk, at least nowadays, you're playing Zabu. You're playing Darkhawk, Zabu, that's always a combo. Now it's not necessarily the combo. Essentially, what this does is it knocks 2 power off the Darkhawk combo, which is a lot. And sometimes it's way more than that because the Rockslide will be played multiple times in some deck lists, right? If you're copying Rockslide in any way, you're playing it multiple times. So sometimes you're losing 2 to 4 power, which is very meaningful in a Darkhawk deck. Every power matters. I'm a big Darkhawk fan personally, so I don't know how I feel about this change. I guess if you put in the context that Darkhawk is one of the best decks in the game still, and has always been the best deck, one of the best decks, like top 5, top 3, consistently since it's been released. It makes sense that they keep making changes, trying to hit Darkhawk, and Darkhawk is hard to hit Darkhawk itself now, unless you make Darkhawk a 5-drop, but that completely breaks the whole boundary of like how you play Darkhawk, right? Like Darkhawk works with Zabu, that's like how it's been. So you have to keep changing Rock Slide to make it work. And this is one of their new adjustments where you just make it a 3-drop. Honestly, there's a world where this isn't the worst change, where you get more consistency in non-Zabu games. You just lose some base power with Darkhawk, but being able to play Rock Slide is better than not being able to play Rock Slide at all. So honestly, there's a world where I can see this was a good change for the deck instead of this being a bad change, right? You're losing 2 power, but you can still do things with Absorbing Man. So you can go Rock Slide on 3, Absorbing Man on 4, and you're still doing a lot of power, and then Darkhawk is still really strong. So this is the hardest one to evaluate for me because it looks straight like a nerf, but there are some benefits for being a 3-cost card. Obviously, those benefits go away if you get Zabu on 2. But in those games where you don't get Zabu on 2, which happens a decent amount, you're going to have this Rock Slide fallback pattern that's not really going to be hampered by not having the Zabu, which normally your game is like really screwed if you don't have the Zabu. So this is an interesting one for me. I'm not fully sure what I make of it. I can see it being just a straight 2-power nerf, but I can also see the consistency factor kind of paying for itself over time as you play this deck as your main build. So this one's pretty interesting. What do I have to say about this one? Here we go again. We know Darkhawk's a star. Yes, he's Rock Slide slowing the van with rocks. It's not bad for metaphor, but someone has to do the dirty work. However, this isn't just a small nerf to the Zabu Darkhawk deck, though that's its primary purpose. We're trying to keep power focus in Darkhawk if possible, as he's the appealing builder on element. So they don't want to mess Darkhawk because Darkhawk isn't only played with Rock Slide. You can play Darkhawk in negative. You can play Darkhawk with Bask. You don't necessarily need the Rock Slide. So if you change Darkhawk, you also nerf those other deck lists that don't fully rely on the Rock Slide element. So I think that's a fair look of things as well. That's pretty interesting take there. We're curious to explore what the world looks like where we can reduce Darkhawk's reliance on Zabu, since it prevents both cards from appearing in a wider range of archetypes when the combination is so strong. That's true. When you're playing Zabu decks, it's like, okay, I'm playing Zabu. What goes in? Rock Slide, Darkhawk. Okay, then what, right? Then you start building your deck. Because Darkhawk, Rock Slide are so strong, so effective, that it's so hard to put a Zabu deck without a Darkhawk. So that's fair. That's interesting take as well. I wonder if that will change things, but it definitely could. You could definitely run Darkhawk without Zabu, which I've never really said before. So I don't know. I still think Zabu Darkhawk is still pretty nice. Playing it for 3 with like Mystique and stuff like that, if you need to, is still really good. Slotting Rock Slide between Korg, Black Widow, and Darkhawk might make that happen. Also might not. Maybe this goal is even doomed. Let's take a step to find out. Yeah, so it does mean you can go full Darkhawk and go Korg, Black Widow, Rock Slide, Darkhawk without the Zabu. That's very true. I wonder if people will be playing that, but it's an interesting idea. So let's see that. And we do have one more. I did say this was the last one. I lied. We also have Lady Deathstrike moving from a 5-3 to a 5-4. So this is a big change for Lady Deathstrike, in my opinion, because there's so many cards with 3 base power that just weren't hit by Lady Deathstrike base. And now you're moving it up to 4. So now you have so much more things you can hit. And this card also gets affected by buffs. So if you buff this, right? Let's say you play Forge, it's a 5/7, you can kill 6 power cards. That's so many. That's so many critical cards that have 6 power. So this has a lot of potential to really be a crazy finisher for decks, right? Even Forge into Lady Deathstrike into Zola seems meaningful now. Definitely an interesting take, right? Because you can play 7 power cards, right? You can play Ebony Maw, you can play Maximus. What's on 2? Is there any 2 cost 7 power cards that jump out to me? Not really. But you know, Ebony Maw Maximus is pretty good. And then you go Forge into Lady Deathstrike into Zola, right? And I mean, that's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. But honestly, we'll have to see. A lot of people are playing Lady Deathstrike and Thanos decks, Thanos and Destroy decks. So I do think everyone playing Lady Deathstrike is just like, woohoo, like this is great. So definitely hard since I don't have the card, right? I haven't, and I only see it in Destroy decks, and it does okay, but it hasn't been super powerful. However, I do remember being in multiple scenarios where I'm thinking, oh, if they had one more power, this destroys me here. And now they're getting that one more power, so I can definitely see this being a lot more effective and maybe rising in priority in the meta. Now, with that in mind, this does raise some concerns that we've talked about before with them buffing cards that have already passed in the spotlight, right? This card, just when the spotlight was revealed, wasn't very good. People rightly told people not to get this, and now you're buffing it. Now there's a good chance this is very prevalent, very in the meta, but a lot of people have already passed in the spotlight. What do you do now? How is this a good problem to solve? You can't just hope every bad card release, or not every subpar card released by second dinner gets immediately buffed like this, right? That's not a reliable method of buying every card released in the game. So you just have these situations where, through no fault of the players, a lot of players don't have access to a card they now want, and there's no easy way to get that, right? It's going to take you a long time to get tokens. So I feel like this is something that needs to be addressed in a meaningful way, with cards being changed, nerfed, and buffed, right? How do you deal with that with this spotlight system where you can't get cards that have been in the spotlight recently very easily? So maybe something I want to make a video about, right? Have just a dedicated video, because it is an issue. Also with like series drops, right? So those kind of things do matter. And this isn't a negative video. We're just kind of talking about the changes, but it is something that needs to be said. So I would just want to mention it. But let's look at what they have to say. So while we were willing to take a chance missing 2 high on Legion, same wasn't true of Lady Deathstrike. The difference is stark. If Legion is in the best deck, games might be a little wacky, but if Deathstrike's in the best deck, games might be super frustrating. The difference is stark. What are they trying to say here? Are they saying if we overbuff Lady Deathstrike, it's a frustrating experience, where with Legion it might not be. It might just be wacky, but not super frustrating. That's probably true. However, we did want her to land on solid ground. So they wanted to be overly safe with Lady Deathstrike, because if it was too strong, the game becomes frustrating, which is true. So I agree with that. But maybe it was too little of a buff, too little of a power, and they think now she could use a little help. We're going to try this buff, and if it doesn't work out, we'll evaluate a more significant change. So if she's just not being played, or if she's too powerful, etc., they might just change her ability in some way. Okay. Those are fair takes, and I do agree that if you overbuffed her on release, it would just be a frustrating game experience. So I can see that for sure. So hopefully we'll see if this is not too crazy, and it's definitely a chance it's not. So I'm not too crazy worried. It's just an interesting card to evaluate overall. Now, overall, when we look at all these changes here, things like that. I do think this is a pretty good set of changes, right? I like the Doctor Doom change. I like the Marvel change. Legion I think is acceptable. Rockslide is hard to evaluate, but I can see some appeals in both directions as a nerf and a consistency card for the Zabu decks. And then Lady Deathstrike is the one where, could be super strong, but we'll have to see how much people adjust with this change, right? Because there's definitely some potential power to be made with this Deathstrike change for sure. So that is the overview. Look at me going long again. Hope you guys enjoy. Let me know your thoughts on the intro, and just the vibe of the video. And I'll see you guys later. What are your decks that you're going to be making with this? I'm probably going to do something with Doom and Rockslide. Those are the ones to jump out to me, see how they work. But other than that, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be